seems like. He's a great guy, great player. He's got an idea for a bass that he wants, and he's like, yeah. He goes, you could do it, and I'm like, yeah. I wonder. And so I've been mulling through that one for probably a year, just like thinking about it. The crazy harmony caster that I did, that was a fun one. What are some other weird stuff? I'm working on an instrument right now that is an inexpensive project guitar that you could purchase on the internet. That's essentially like an Ibanez RG style, a shredder style guitar. Yeah. But this guy got this crazy paint job done on it, and so I made a custom pick guard. And then he convinced the guy to paint the pick guard the same, and so I'm in the process of putting that all together. And so, and once it's together, then comes the setup part of it, which hopefully it's coming along pretty well. I had a couple setbacks, but it's working out. So, but yeah, stuff like that. Also, like somebody gave me, and this is something that lately I've been working on a little bit. Somebody gave me, probably 2 years ago, gave me a stack about 6 inches thick of 4x8 sheets of masonite.
Oh,
and so the thing is a very specific old guitar was made out of poplar and masonite. They were essentially like a semi-hollow guitar, but the top and back were masonite. And these electric guitars, Dan Electro made them.
Oh, yeah.
So Dan Electros were made out of masonite and poplar. So I was like, oh, I got to do that. So I got all this masonite. So I've been calculating how many bodies I can get out of that, and I can probably get as much as 80 guitar bodies out of that.
Wow.
All that masonite. So I've
Those
been
Dan
prototyping.
Electros had a pretty cool sound, too.
Yeah. And that's the other thing. I mean, it's an electric instrument, so how well it what it sounds like. People talk about tone wood in electric guitars, and while it does make a difference, it's like talking about like talking about types of salt.
Gotcha.
It's salt. And it
at
always,
the end of the day, it's salt.
At the end of the day, it's salt. And you have the smoked whatever salt.
Sure.
Yeah. That makes a difference. But unless you change major ingredients in the recipe, it's going to sound like an electric guitar. And those major ingredients that change that sound the most are the pickups, because that's what picks up the string sound and turns it into what your amplifier does. I mean, that's why everybody has 50 zillion pedals on the ground that they stomp and tap dance all over, so they can have all these cool sounds. Well, I mean, at that point, you can plug whatever you want into it. Yeah,
because it's all processed anyway.
Turn it into whatever you want. I mean, you can't change one thing into another, and it kind of groups into like thumbprint families of tonality. But so Dan Electros are these inexpensive styled deals that actually can sound really good. Well, for instance, the guitar I played at the Decker deal, when I played with the live recording with Decker, is a guitar I made out of masonite and chunks of plywood I had laying around the shop, and then put a neck on it that I got from somebody else, and put some good pickups in it, and thing sounds freaking great. So I'm in the process of making I'm gonna make choose a few, like 3 or 4 body styles, and then just make up as many bodies as I can out of that masonite. And then, hey, I want a blah blah blah. Well, you want this body, or this body? Okay. And what pickups do you want? Because I haven't routed anything to put them in there, so we can do whatever you want, and then it can sound. And then a guitar that theoretically is made out of cast off stuff, can be this amazing sounding cool thing. So I like the, I mean, heck, I'm in the freaking Haymarket Squares. I like poking my finger at the system and going, oh, you think you have to do it like this? How about like this? Oh, wait, that sounds great. Yeah.
There you go.
So,
and how did the cat like houses out of the amp cases bodies come to be? Because those are some cool things.
So I've been, because I make stuff, and having amplifiers mean, you play electric instruments, you have to amplify them, and having the amplifier head or amplifiers that then can have extension cabinets and that kind of stuff. So I've been getting and buying and selling amplifiers and, you know, swapping speakers out of things. So I've made more than a few different amp cabinets, like the cabinets for actual amplifiers as well as just speaker cabinets. And, you know, doing like custom stuff like that. That's some of the custom stuff that I've done, mostly for myself, but then about half of it is been sold off to trade up for other stuff to make other things. So those, I was making these interesting cabinets, and the cabinets are just boxes. I mean, you make a decent sized box, and you make it out of materials that are of the qualities that you want. It'll sound halfway decent as long as you put the right speakers in it and that kind of stuff. So that part of it is kind of that's a known thing. I just do. So then what they look like can be eccentric or interesting. And so I've done a couple of rehousing actual amplifiers to look like the look is kind of a almost like a shabby chic or whatever. It's like a distressed look. Like it's like, oh, this is a box that was in the back of somebody's, you know, like one of the colors, we call it barn burner red, because you know, you play a show and man, that was a barn burner, but it's red, but it also has these burnt spots on it, like so it's like, oh yeah, it's like this cool box that you salvaged out of a barn, or it's salvaged from this wood that was a barn that's halfway burnt down, and you salvaged wood. So I've been making those, and my wife, who is a professional cat lady, her name is Kate Benjamin, and she has a website called House Panther, Haus, like the Bauhaus Panther, and so she writes about and does all things cat. She's written 2 New York Times bestselling books. She's redesigned cat shelters, done what we call catification indoors, which is basically environmental enrichment, like you would think of at a zoo, but for your pet that lives at your home. But with the added twist of, it's, you know, cats would be happy with like wadded up pieces of trash and a cardboard box that you got at Costco. Yeah. But, you know, not everybody wants to have trash and cardboard sitting on their floor of their living room. Yes. So it's like, how do I do something that looks amazing but does the same job? That's my wife's forte. So she does all of that. And she was looking at these things and she's like, hey, what if you just cut a hole in the front and the back, so it had a hole in the front and the back, and like it was the speaker place, but you made them like small for like a cat to sit in. And I was like, she's like, could you do that? And I was like, well, yeah. I mean, it's just like building a regular thing, just with the front and the back. And she's like, oh. So then she's like, okay, well, what about this? And she asked me a bunch of different questions on like the finishes and how we could do them so that they're non-toxic and all that kind of good stuff, and seal the inside as well as the outside in case somebody barfs inside there. And so now we have these things called cat cabs, because you know, speaker cab. Yeah. So and then the kind of interesting thing is like the baffle where the speaker would typically go is wood as well, and so those are typically made out of plywood, birch plywood usually. But these ones aren't birch just because birch is much more expensive, and I don't need the tonality that birch applies to the cat cabs. They're more of a pine.
You don't want
deal.
The resonance of the meow and the
exactly. Although they are made out of pine, which is a very resonant cabinet wood. So they're the boxes that are essentially like they have a hole in the front and the back, but because they're plywood, you can route stuff into the plywood that basically makes an embossment. It takes like just one of the layers of the plywood off and exposes a different type of wood underneath. And so by doing that, when you look at the cat cab, so you look at the front, it's a round deal with ears. Yeah. And then you look at the back, it's the tail and the feet. And so it's like, you know, so they look like cats. That's and they're awesome. Also these cabinets. And then you just use the same you know, the feet and corners that you would put on a regular cabinet. And I do some treatments to those to get an interesting patina kind of finish to those. And so we're doing those. So as soon as the ones that I have sell out,
Because you've sold out before too. I've seen a couple of different times. That
we have some currently.
Okay.
So they are available on the housepanther.com website. Cool. And the only thing is, I mean, they're handmade. Everyone's, there's like 3 basic colors, and the 3 basic colors are essentially the same, but it's like each piece of wood's a little bit different. So while this one is the same, this one's barn burner red, and this one also is barn burner red. When you make them, they're handmade, and they're supposed to be slightly different. So it's kind of like we have examples on the website of what they look like, but the one you get might be just a hair different.
It's going to be unique.
Exactly. And it's supposed to be. Yeah. So so I'm excited about those. Those are cool. We sent one to the guy that my wife co-wrote the catification books with, Jackson Galaxy. So if you're familiar with Animal Planet's My Cat from Hell, he's the host of that.
Yeah.
Of which I've been in the background of at least one of the episodes of that.
That's cool.
And I've worked on a couple of the episodes doing the catification part of it.
Oh, nice.
With my wife, because they'll have her on. She's been on half a dozen episodes at least.
Cool.
But yeah, and then she just was out in New York at a convention that they call a cat camp. That is essentially like it's like a kind of almost a Comic-Con type of thing, but less pop culture and more like things like how if you find how do you care for tiny kittens that don't have a mom and you need to bottle feed, and then how do you do well to foster a cat that then can be adopted, and how do you have community cats that you can get them all fixed, and how do you go about doing that and feeding, and that it's a little more towards that aspect of it. They're actually going to be doing another one in Vegas in I think November, but I'm not positive. And so that'll be fun.
That's awesome.
So I sent one because Jackson Galaxy, obviously, he's a guitar player. I've worked on some of his guitars. He's got some cool guitars.
Nice.
He's got a really neat amp too. He's got a twin reverb, but it's a Billy Zoom modded twin reverb. So it's the same mods that like the guy that what's his name from Social Distortion plays through twin reverbs that are modded by Billy Zoom. Gotcha. And it's like one of those and Billy Zoom doesn't do much amp work anymore, so it's kind of like ooh, cool, you got one of those. So, and he's got some other crazy cool vintage guitars that I've done some work on it on occasion here and there. So we sent him one, of course, because he's a cat guy, and a guitar player, so it's like, why wouldn't I send one to him? So we'll see how that goes. Hopefully he likes it.
Well, that's really cool. You're doing some cool stuff.
Thanks.
I would like to at some point actually come down to the shop and maybe get a tour or something. That would be really cool. I
definitely
certainly have an admiration for instrument building and that kind of craft. It's something that I don't know. There's that part of me that does enjoy building the models and doing the figuring out how to wire something myself or do all of that. It's that appeals to me. I'm like, okay, but
awesome. It's fun stuff. People, ask when people ask, well, what's it take to build guitars? I'm like, well, it's not. I mean, it's not rocket science. You just gluing pieces of wood together in the correct order and in the correct sizes.
That's some dedication, though.
Yeah, but
patience too, I would imagine.
Patience, and to make it be more than just it's just a wood box, blah blah blah. Mm-hmm. To make it actually be an instrument, it takes attention to all the details that nobody else ever notices and nobody else really ever cares about. Like, oh wow, I need to. That miter joint here and that little bit there, and I need to shave a little bit more off of that brace because otherwise it's just not going to sound right. Any of those things,
Yeah,
just that.
So if somebody's interested in commissioning work or anything like that, do they go through allredguitars.com?
Yes, they can contact me, Mark at allredguitars.com, or allredguitars.com. There's contact and basically gets me through email, or
Gotcha.
if they want to call, the numbers on the website, on the Facebook page, Instagram page, send you back to I believe the website. So There's ways to get a hold of me.